now.
All right. Please, I want to confirm if I'm audible. Before we... Okay. So I believe I should be audible. All right. Good evening once again, ladies and gentlemen. Can anybody see me from this end? Hello, where is Beatrice? I think our network is bad because it's supposed to be on this call. What's happening? My slide can be moved.
Joseph, please can you go?
Please, can you show the slides? Please. Thank you.
You're supposed to join the all right. Okay, so let's get going. All right, so we are sincerely sorry. We apologize for the technical glitches we had that caused a break in the transmission. So this is the new link now, and we need to start. So like I mentioned earlier, the topic we are talking about today is titled Relevance of Geographical Information System in Agriculture, and we are deeply looking at how GIS is empowering farmers to farm more smarter, more profitably, and through the approach of what I call data-driven farming. So there are various kinds of data in agriculture that can be generated and based on their context and the requirements. So how does farmer get this information, and how they able to work with it to be able to farm efficiently, save costs, improve their yield, most importantly practice agriculture in a more sustainable way. So we have an expert in the house who is going to be doing justice to that. But before that, I want to talk about the academy. So welcome once again. This is Precision Field Academy. It's a digital agriculture training school where we are building the capacity of youths and to lead with precision agriculture and ensuring they remain relevant in the future of work and tech in agriculture. Every industry is drastically changing, so agriculture is changing as well. So what's our vision? We have a vision to create a world where every young person, regardless of their background, has the opportunity to become a digitally savvy farmer or agricultural professional, driving sustainable and equitable growth in their communities through the transformative power of technology. And our mission is simple, is to raise next generation of farmers that are tech inclined and digitally savvy. So about Precision Field Academy. Precision Field Academy is a social enterprise where we train and build the capacity of young professionals in modern and emerging technology for the future of work and ultimately to lead with precision agriculture. So what's a methodology in this institution or in our academy? We have three core methodology. Number one is education and knowledge sharing. Number two is training and skill development. Number three is coaching and mentorship. Beyond this three methodology, we have 6 tech skill in focus, majorly where our programs and courses revolves around. Number one is drone technology. we have various courses in relation to drone technology and how drone technology can be leveraged to practice agriculture in a more smarter and efficient way. We have geographic information system and remote sensing, and you can see that the class we have today, speaks directly into GIS and remote sensing. So you get more information when we get into the core of the class. So we also have data science in agriculture, and this is talking about various data sets from research perspective or even agricultural practice perspective. We're talking about plant classification, their biomass, the size, species identification, and all of that. This revolves around data science in agriculture. We also have robotics and Internet of Things, and this is when this is talking about developing intelligent systems that can help, take decisions even when you are not there through like pre-instruction programs. And these are robotic devices like smart irrigation sensors that could like trigger irrigation pumps in the farm even when you are not there at all. So there's sensors that works with it, like the moisture level sensor to dictate the level of the soil moisture and all of that to be able to trigger. So that's under robotics and Internet of Things. We have artificial intelligence and machine learning. This is very, very important if you want to do like plant classification. If you have a very large field, oil palm plantation, orchard projects, and all of that, and like you want to know the number of the quantity of the crops you have on the field, artificial intelligence and machine learning algorithms will be needed through some I would say photogrammetry platform or intelligent platforms that can really help you to count the number of the crops you have. So we usually do that with drones very well, like fly the drone, count the number of the crops, and it will be able to tell you that these are the number of viable crops on this field, these are person. And lastly is enterprise development. We are not just training people for the theory's sake. We are much more interested or focused on the practical application of things in agriculture, and this is talking about practical farming. Also raising youths or young leaders who are going to like develop systems, develop solutions, develop technologies in agriculture, especially hardware and software solutions that can really help agriculture practice to take a quantum leap. So why do we do what we do? What's our motivation? We discovered that there's a skill gap that needs to be closed, and young professionals need to build skills on both technical skills, enterprise skill, and even soft skill for the future of work in agriculture. Secondly, observing the trend is not just enough. So youths need to become enabler and a player in the fourth agricultural revolution, and not just mere observer. They need to become a direct player, fully involved. And thirdly, technology is actually the key to unlock African agriculture potential if it is leveraged effectively. Alright, so why should you join us? We are creating the future we want in agriculture, and we also connect you to the world of information and world of opportunities, which comes in various aspects of spheres, in terms of scholarship opportunities, also internship opportunities with agrarian organizations. We have opportunities in terms of volunteership platforms, and this is coming from both local and international perspectives. So you could get opportunity from food and agriculture organization, local and international. So we have skill development through project collaboration, community interaction, and workshops, and we have been doing this through collaborations with various agricultural institutions, and we have various partners also collaborating with us on various projects that we do. The likes of Federal University of Agriculture, Abeokuta FUNAB, FUTMINA, Rivers State University. We also have the DJ Academy. We have Dev Global and the like. So these are part of our key partners that we work hand in hand in delivering digital agriculture solution. Also, we give you access to coaching and mentorship from industry leaders and professionals, and webinars like this also gives you like a first-hand information to be able to like broaden your knowledge on the concept of agriculture, or what you know about agriculture, or the reality of what is changing in agriculture, for you to stay up to date in the industry. So at Precision Field Academy, we are building a community of young tech inclined and digitally savvy farmer professionals. So we have various courses like I mentioned. This slide is just talking about courses that we have from drone technology perspective. The basic drone pilot competency course, like you want to get like a beginner grade, you want to create like you want to get started here with drone technology in agriculture, getting into the industry of drones. What are the things you need to know? So we have courses that like provide you professional training, yes, on the aspect of what you need to know, because this is a regulated technology and you can't just like operate it anyhow you like. So it's required that you have certification and licenses. So these programs actually give, so you can always speak to us in case like you want to get started with any of our courses. And we also have courses on GIS and remote sensing, and part of the webinar we have today, this is directly talking about GIS and remote sensing, and you're going to be learning so many things as regarding the application of GIS and remote sensing here. So these are some of the courses: fighting mapping masterclass for crop monitoring and remote sensing. We also have agricultural drone pilot programs, and this is talking about agricultural sprayer drones and how we can use them for pest management, also for seed broadcasting, especially for rice farmers. Even aquaculture can also leverage agricultural drones because they can use them to broadcast feeds and pellets on a large amount of water of fish ponds. We also have basic drone pilot competency course, those like the beginner grades of drones, and we have the licensing course, this that qualifies you to be able to like fly drone for commercial purpose. So before bringing up our speaker, I quickly just want to read through a bio. Her name is Nene. That's Precious Nene. She's a geospatial analyst at Integrated Area Precision, and she's passionate about transforming local data into actionable insight that drives real-world impact and advance the United Nations SDG goals. So she helps organizations make smarter decisions using GIS, artificial intelligence analytics, and drone technology across agriculture, healthcare, urban planning, and logistics. So beyond the technical work, she's passionate about building immersive communities and championing women in drone techs and geospatial sciences. So join me as I welcome to the podium or bring to the stage our speaker for today. Hello. Okay.
Good evening.
All right. You have the floor now, so I think you can go ahead. You are
All
audible.
right.
Thank you.
Okay. Can you still hear me? All right. Good evening, everyone. I'm delighted to be part of this program this evening, particularly because it's speaking about agriculture, how we can advance agriculture using modern technologies available to us now. So today we are going to be speaking about GIS, the relevance of GIS in agriculture. GIS just means Geographic Information System. Now you have geography in it, you have information, and you have system. So system tells you it's a conglomerate. It's not just one thing. It's wrapped up with different features coming together to make a system. Then geography means that it has to do with location data. It has to do with location of where we are on the earth. So it says why spatial data is now central to modern farming. Prior to now, we've been doing agriculture, guesswork, we are guessing the weather, or we are able to predict what to do because we know that from this season to this season it rains, or from this season to this season it's dry. So that's how we've been running agriculture in the past. But recently, you would notice that climate change is affecting all that. We don't have, or we can't predict our weather patterns these days. We can't predict when it will rain. We can't predict when it is dry. Imagine rain is still falling in December. So all these inconsistencies is what warrants that we start applying modern ways of doing agriculture and not just relying on what we already know. The next slide, please. Please, I want to confirm that you can hear me. All right. So, why does GIS matter in agriculture? And we know that every farm decision happens somewhere, be it planting, irrigation, harvesting, whatever it is you are doing on your farm, it is happening somewhere. It has a location data. And so we have to work on a system that takes this into consideration. For example, your soil data, your soil is somewhere, is located somewhere on the earth. Rainfall, pests affect plants somewhere. All this information, your roads, they have location data, they have coordinates, they have distance measurements, they have area measurements, and all these are important when you are talking about agriculture, when you are working with your farm. So spatial data lets you reproduce high yields across seasons and locations instead of relying on memory or guesswork. So when you're working with GIS in agriculture, you are not speculating, you are not guessing, you are not saying, oh, it's going to happen like this because you're working with data. And data has been known, for example, in the world, data has been known to help us quantify, help us predict, help us see patterns. So you are watching patterns from a particular period and you can tell what is working, what is not, what you can improve, what you have to stop doing, and areas that you can make improvements so that your yield or your produce comes out better than last season. So you want to ask, what is GIS? What does GIS mean? And GIS stands for Geographic Information System. It's a system designed to collect, store, analyze, and display spatial data. Spatial data just means location based data. And since we are talking about a system, like I said before, it's not just one feature. So When we are talking about GIS doesn't only imply the software. Let's say you are using QGIS, you're using ArcGIS. That's not all there is to GIS. From the moment you start collecting data, the moment you even start planning to go on your field trip to collect data, to analyze, to solve a problem, basically, you've already put GIS in motion. So let's start with data collection. And when you are talking about data collection, you'll be referring to your hardware. So that could be a drone, it could be your handheld GPS, it could be your computer. That's if you are going to be using satellite data, and then sensors used to collect and process geographic data. Then when you come to software, which is another component of GIS, you're talking about the applications you use to analyze the data you've already collected. So there are different applications. The ones I have here are QGIS, ArcGIS, Global Mapper. There are different applications you can use to analyze your data. And then we come to the data itself. So while you have different, let's say, hardware and software, the data is equally important because that is the bane of everything that you are working with. If something is wrong with the data you collect, the whole process is going to be stalled. You can't do anything if your data is wrong. So we have different types of data. We have spatial data. We talk about maps, satellite images, attributes data, information about the features that you can see on ground, and also crop type, because we are speaking about agriculture. Crop type is a type of data. Soil type is also type of data. And then another component is processes. We talk about the processes, the models, the different types of analysis you are going to be running on your data, depending on the results you are looking to achieve. So if I want to do something like plant counting, the kind of data I'm going to collect is going to be different from when I want to do crop stress monitoring. So the type of data is going to determine, or your results rather, is going to determine the process involved in analyzing your data. And then finally, people. So even as we have considered hardware, software, data, and every other thing, the person that is going to be running this analysis is also very important, an important component of GIS. Most times when people talk about components of GIS, they leave out the person that is going to be running this analysis. So GIS analysts, technicians, and decision makers who use the system are also components of GIS. So one of the use cases for GIS in agriculture, we're asking, why do we even need to use GIS in agriculture? The first thing would be farm boundary delineation. So, for example, you have a farm, you know that you have a farm in a certain location. You probably do not have the coordinates of that place. You don't have the exact coordinates of that place. You don't know the size of the farm. And let's even paint a more vivid picture. You have like crops, let's say trees, oil palm trees on the farm, and you want to know, okay, what is the area of this farm? How far does my farm go? What's the size? What's the perimeter? You can do that with GIS. So it helps us to define accurate field boundaries. It also helps us if we want to track crop rotation. So for example, I have a farm and I'm growing different crops on my farm. I'm growing different crops on my farm, and I want to divide them into plots, or I want to see how I can distinguish them. GIS can help you to do that accurately. And also, if you want to resolve disputes, so if I didn't have a stipulated boundary of my farm earlier on, and someone else is trying to lay claim on that farm, there's going to be like a dispute between both of us because we have nothing to prove that this farm belongs to us or this place belongs to us. But using GIS, if I have a plan or a map to show that this place rightfully belongs to me, it helps to clear disputes and also access subsidies. Let's say if I'm going to be meeting the government for a grant, I want someone to help me out with some money to do something on my farm, it is going to help that I have proof of ownership of my farmland. So one of the things GIS helps us with on our farms are farm boundary delineation. All right, we have plant health or stress detection. So when we come to this is where your data, I mentioned data earlier, this is where data comes into play. Now, if I were to collect normal RGB data can also be referred to as normal pictures like you take on your phone, what your eyes can see. If I take that kind of data and I want to analyze it, the detail or the extent of information I would get from RGB data is not going to be as detailed as what I would get if I were to use a multispectral camera to capture the data. And so, for when you want to detect something like plant health, you want to know how good your crops are doing. If there is a pest infestation, you want to know how good or how the extent rather of the damage on the farm. That is where multispectral data comes in. So you can see that the data varies when you want to run your analysis. The data varies for depending on the type of analysis you want to run. So spectral indices and pattern recognition detect stress long before the human eye can. Now, the multispectral sensors, they take images of your farm in near infrared bands, red bands, something your naked eyes can't see. And you could be looking at the plant and feeling like, oh, this plant is healthy, there's nothing wrong with this plant. Well, even though the pest has infested this area, it has not yet gotten here, not knowing that it has already started spreading. But using multispectral data now, we can see, and with GIS, we can also check the extent using vegetation indices like NDVI, NDRE, OSAVI, MSAVI. You can use all those vegetation indices to detect depending on what you're working with. So some vegetation indices work well with dense vegetation, some work well with sparse vegetation, some work well with your farm when your crops are just growing, they are just tender, they've not yet sprouted very well. They are still coming up. Some work with that. So it depends on what you want to analyze. What result are you hoping to get from this analysis you're trying to run? And then GIS helps us do that. It helps us identify disease pockets, deficiencies, or heat stress early. The key word here is early. You can detect this disease later on, but at what cost? At what expense? By that time, the damage must have long gone. You've lost your, let's say you've lost your input, you've lost a lot of crops to this infestation because you couldn't detect early. But with GIS now, after you've collected your data, you can analyze these images. You can see on time that, oh, this area is infected but is quickly spreading towards this area, and then you have quick intervention. You don't lose as much as you would have if you didn't involve GIS in the process. And so we have examples like it could identify where problems exist, the extent of the damage, and what areas need action. Remember, we are working with location, precise location. So you cannot only say this is the area that is infected, you also have precise location of where, so that when you are deploying your solution, let's say you want to spray your pesticide, you want to spray your insecticide, you're not just doing a blanket operation, you are taking it precise down to where the infestation is happening, down to where you need to be. And so it also transforms guesswork into measurable decisions. You are not guessing, you are not saying, oh, maybe it's affecting or maybe it's not. You know for sure, and then you can make decisions quick. You can make decisions fast. Also, it helps scale farming operations and plan interventions accurately. We are still speaking about precision agriculture here. Everything has to be accurate, everything has to be on point, exact location, exact amount of pesticide or insecticide that you are spraying, everything is precise. So another use case is soil or terrain analysis. And in this aspect, we'll be speaking about soil type and potency, slope, elevation maps to predict crop suitability and survival. So elevation most times goes hand in hand with your soil type and your slope. It also goes well with your rainfall as well. So the elevation just means the undulation of the earth, like let's say where you are planting, where your farm is, how high are some places, how low are some places. That can come into play when you want to plant certain crops, when you want to plant rice. So if you have a place that usually gets flooded when it rains, you know that there are certain crops you can plant in that area. Some farms have some places higher than some, the elevation is higher than some, and then you know that okay, these crops I can plant them on the higher land or the highland, and then I can plant these ones lower, knowing that if it should rain and there's a downwash, it's not going to affect these crops as much as it would if they were on the lower part of the farm. So results from GIS, when we use GIS to analyze for our elevation, we have results like your digital elevation model. This one shows height differences across the farm, can show you what parts of the farm with accurate measurements, the heights of different parts of the farm. Now, this also comes into play when you are considering irrigation for your farm. You know that when you are designing the irrigation, you want to design it in a way that it saves water flow. Like water flow will spread easily. It just moves. It doesn't stop at a particular place. You use the elevation of the land to your advantage. You don't place irrigation pipes, let's say, opposite of how the land is. So if you have a high land coming down, sloping into a lower land, you know that's how you're supposed to set your irrigation pipe. So digital elevation models help to show height differences across the farm. So if you have a data, you have image of your farm, you can run an analysis using GIS to know the areas of your farm that are higher, to know the places that are lower. You can also do your digital surface model. This one takes into consideration features on the farm. So DEM just checks the elevation of the bare land, but DSM in this case takes into consideration elevation of other features. So there could be trees on your farm, there could be farmhouses, there could be buildings. DSM will now take, like you now analyze it. When you do DSM, it's going to show you different structures, their heights. It's going to check take it's going to check the height of different structures on your farm. So it could be anything, it could be trees, it could be buildings, it could be poles, whatever it is that is on your farm as a structure aside bare land. DSM is going to show you that. And then it captures surface features affecting water flow and shade. So slope and drainage maps help identify erosion prone and flood prone zones. So if your farm is in an area where there's likely to be flood, you need to have GIS can help you to estimate the level of flooding that is going to happen in that area, and then you can produce maps like the slope maps. Also, soil maps can help you reveal texture, fertility, and suitability for specific crops. Now, for soil maps, there are two ways to do it. So, prior to now, I mentioned that we can get data from drones, we can get data from satellites, we can get soil data from satellite images. But the limitation with that is that it's not as consistent as if you were to go to the farm itself, take a sample and test it in the lab. So if you are doing just a blanket analysis, just something to an estimate, you can get data from satellite data. But if you want to plant, if this is a large operation and you want to plant some crops, you have to do soil suitability analysis. You have to test the crop specific and the soil rather specifically to be sure that it is good enough, it's rich enough, well aerated, very suitable for the particular crop that you are going to plant. So GIS could also help in that aspect, but depending on the depth of the analysis you want to do. So you could also use that to know location. So for example, if you take a soil sample from this area, you know the location of that place. When you want to plant, you can monitor the growth. So after I've planted, I know that I tested this place before planting. I can use GIS to monitor the growth of what I planted there over time. Let's say I do it in a month, 3 months, 6 months. If it's a crop that grows through a year, you can monitor the growth over time of that crop using GIS. All right, we have plant counting and density. Plant count or density directly affects yield, input efficiency, and cost. So you want to be very, very sure about your inputs and your outputs. That's where plant count comes in. So most times you have an average number of crops you can plant per hectare. But then after planting, some of them won't germinate. Not all of them germinate. Sometimes it could be because of, it could be anything actually. It could be soil, it could be weather, it could be anything. And then using GIS, you can count without doing it individually, without counting those plants one by one. With GIS, you can run an analysis that counts the number of plants on your farm at once. You just provide it some samples. It's actually garbage in, garbage out. So it's what you, the samples you provide, the quality of samples you provide to the system, that's what it's going to use to calculate. That's what it's going to use to run an algorithm and calculate the exact number of plants you have on your farm. So sometimes when we plant, we have to take cognition of that, the fact that if you plant crops too dense, it can lead to competition and disease. So if you plant some crops too closely to each other, they are going to be competing for nutrients, they are going to be competing for water. And when you have an outbreak of disease, it's going to spread faster than if they were very well spaced. And also, if you plant them too spaced from each other, you also waste land, you also waste your inputs, you are not maximizing your farmland. All right, GIS helps us to calculate accurate hectares planted per field. You can also do your plant count per hectare. If you want to count per acre, per hectare, you can do that. It can also show you average plants planted on your farm. You can also run a bit of statistics with it, your mean, max, standard deviation, and the rest. You can also have density maps showing high, optimal, and low population zones. So this is very, very important for if you want to replant. So if you have an area that you planted but not everything germinated, you can use GIS to analyze. You see those areas, you have the precise location of those areas, and you go there directly and just replant if you need to. It can also show you expected yield estimates based on density patterns. So this is where you start to predict. If you say, okay, I've planted this number of crops, I'm predicting that I should have this amount of harvest. So GIS can help us do that. You can also use it to calculate, you can also calculate your production costs based on how much you've planted. These are realistic calculations. You are not speculating, you are not guessing. You have the data to show for it, and so you calculate it. Then harvest logistics too are planned ahead using estimated output. Note that this estimated output is not certain, is give or take, but you are well within a bracket. You can say that okay, from I expect to have it from this range to this range. from 500 to 1000. You are not doing guesswork, maybe or maybe not, because you have data to back you up, because you've calculated your inputs, you've been able to see that these areas didn't germinate well, you've gone back, you've replanted. That way you can calculate or estimate how much you are going to make based on your harvest. And also, when you now have the harvest, you can now compare it with your expected use. So what you estimated by the time you are harvesting, you can calculate. That is also data in its form. You can also use that to know, okay, what can I do better? Remember that data is what helps us look at our past and know that, okay, I did well here, or I planted this here and it germinated here, so I can know what to do better in the next season, next planting season. What measures am I going to take to ensure that I have more harvest? And so for the next one, we have flood risk analysis. So GIS plays the central role by combining terrain data, elevation, drainage patterns, rainfall history, river network, soil characteristics. A lot of things go into analyzing flood risk. And it's very important because we are having more rainfall, we are having much more cases of flooding. And so it is very important that prior to planting, if you are in an area that is known to have flooding or is flood prone, it is important that you do an analysis of what it's going to be like if you should have like a heavy rainfall. So that's where flood risk analysis comes into play. Now you're going to be taking into consideration a lot of data, different types of data, the elevation, the drainage pattern of that area. Do you have a lot of rivers around? If there are rivers, where are they all leading to? Where are they all pouring into? You want to have that information. You want to check the rainfall history. Even though it's erratic this period, you can't really predict. But if you monitor it well, you can see patterns. You can know how it has been in, let's say, the last 6 months, the last 1 year. So you can also work with that information. You can check your river network, you can check soil characteristics. So if you are in an area that has, let's say, sandy soil, we are planting on sandy soil, you can know that if there should be a flood situation, everything is going to be wiped off. You are going to have erosion. If you have crops on that area, everything is going to be wiped off. So all these analysis help you to plan ahead, plan ahead for what is to come. So you can see the mistakes before they even happen, before you even make them. And you can save yourself your input, you can save yourself cost, you can save yourself the headache of planting and not seeing results. So instead of guessing which parts of a farm are vulnerable, GIS shows you exactly which areas are low lying, poorly drained, or historically flood prone. Like I mentioned earlier, with GIS, you are working with data from the past, working with data present, and you are using both to predict what can happen in the future. You see that it's giving us an edge. We are not just guessing, oh, maybe it's not going to flood this year, or maybe it's not going to flood anytime soon. No, you have accurate data to back it up, and you are ready, you are prepared, you are not taking unawares. So output for flood risk analysis, you have flood risk maps, elevation maps, flow direction models. So flow direction just helps you know what path the if you have like rivers, what path they are taking. So you know that where these rivers are flowing into, you're not supposed to plant there, so that they don't wash off your crops, or they don't wash off the soil on which your crops are planted and then leave your crops bare. Also, you can also analyze vulnerability zones across the farm or region. So analyzing flood data using GIS, you can combine elevation, soil, rainfall, and land use data to show where water will flow, settle, and cause damage. You can also identify flood prone areas before floods happen, not after. Remember, we are working with data to predict. We are arming ourselves with data to predict. So it can also show you patterns. Aside agriculture, even we are supposed to always check for patterns. That's how you know, that's how you mitigate risk. That's how you plan. That's how you can predict. So GIS, using GIS to do flood risk analysis helps to show patterns over time, revealing which areas flood repeatedly and which ones remain safe. So there could also be a twist that these areas that have been safe for a while now become flood prone. But then you have data to avoid the areas that are actually flood prone. And also, it turns past flood events into predictive maps that guide future planting and land use. We are always going to use data to our advantage to make sure that we do not incur losses. Losses can sometimes be inevitable, sometimes, but with data and using GIS to analyze this data, you don't have to incur that much loss. You don't even have to incur loss at all if you are going to be doing all this analysis prior to when you start planting. And also, it supports early warning and planning, like the case I mentioned about using multispectral sensors to capture data from your farm. You can see what is happening before it even shows up on the surface. You don't have to wait for it to come, because sometimes when it already comes out on the surface, you have already lost your investment, you've lost all the money and hard work you've put into the farm. So we are working with advanced technologies to make sure that our input is intact. All right. Career prospects for GIS in agriculture. Now, GIS in agriculture makes farming more productive, sustainable, and climate ready, so that the future of agriculture is intelligent, resilient, and responsive. Now, GIS in agriculture is not limited to people that studied agriculture. It's not limited to people that have an agricultural background. It's not limited to farmers. You can see we have soil scientists, we have agronomists, we have AI and machine learning engineers, extension agents, agricultural economists, developers, software developers. So it's not limited to just people that studied agriculture. If you have a passion for agriculture but you are very good with machine learning, you can train models that help to predict flood. You can train models that help to predict disease outbreak on the farm. You can train models that help to do plant counting. There are a lot of things to do with machine learning when it comes to agriculture. Then for agronomists, for example, if we are working with, let's say, a vegetation indices and we've detected crop stress in some areas, or we've detected a disease infestation in an area, an agronomist can using GIS, an agronomist can decide or prescribe how much fertilizer or how much pesticide or how much insecticide we can spray on an area. We call it a prescription map. So you are going to be using variable rate application. You are going to be spraying precise solutions where they are needed. You're not just going to be doing like a blanket operation, just spray everywhere. No, because we know where the problem is, because we know the exact location, we are going to be deploying our solutions to those areas so that you don't overwhelm the healthy crops with your pesticide or whatever it is you're spraying. We also have GIS is very good for policy and government officials. Once they see that we are now importing modern technology into agriculture, it's and they are seeing results, right? They are seeing that, oh, this is enhancing how farming is done. It is increasing results, it is increasing yield, increasing output. It can help them to refine policies around using these technologies in agriculture. For example, even if you want to talk about drone technology, for example, all these results, when you use GIS in agriculture, you can see that your yield is increasing. They can see that agriculture is getting better as far as Nigeria is concerned. It can help them refine the structure around agriculture. It can help them decide to, okay, we want to give out grants, we want to help small scale farmers, we want to help people that are interested in even learning these technologies, because it is not just for farmers. We have youths that are interested but they don't have resources. It can also help them to decide, okay, we want to create an initiative that brings in people into these sectors of running agriculture with modern technologies, and then you have more people, more hands on deck. That way we can increase food production, we can increase the awareness, we can increase adoption for agriculture, modern technologies in agriculture. We also have developers. There are GIS developers, might not necessarily be in agriculture, but there are a lot of people that do. For example, on QGIS, you have a lot of people that develop plugins for different use cases on QGIS. Someone that is interested in agriculture can go ahead to design or develop plugins specifically for agriculture. On QGIS, there are a lot of plugins for different things, and since it's open source, so many people contribute. So if you're interested, you are very good with programming, Python, you can go ahead and start developing plugins for use specifically in agriculture. We have GIS analysts, people that analyze, could be plant health, stress, whichever of that. We have agricultural economists, extension agents, soil scientists. Yeah. So agriculture has always been about working with land, weather, crops, people, but all of these exist in space and change over time. So we are monitoring that change. We are assessing that change. So we can flow with it, we can use it to our advantage. So GIS is what brings the structure to all these complexity, moving decisions away from guesswork to evidence. So we are operating from a place of knowledge. We are operating from a place of data. We are armed with data. We are not guessing. We see patterns. We know that this is what can be possible. This is what can happen. How do we prevent it? How do we go ahead and mitigate all this risk? GIS brings the structure for that to happen. So GIS shows us what is happening, where it is happening, and how conditions differ from one farm to another, one community to another, or an entire region. Yeah, thank you very much for listening. So I'll take questions if there are any. Yeah, please, do you have any questions?
Hello. Okay. Hello. Hello, everyone.
Okay, can you hear me? Can you hear me? All right, I think I see a question here. As an analyst, what GIS application would I strongly recommend? So GIS applications differ. For example, the QGIS I mentioned, it's open source. Most people or most beginners tilt towards QGIS because it's open source, meaning it doesn't require you to have a license. And it also enables you to make contributions, like I mentioned, plugins. So for example on QGIS now, there are different plugins, and all those plugins are made by different people contributing to the software. So if I were to recommend, I won't say one is more important than the other, but I would say if you cannot afford a license, ArcGIS Pro is licensed and it's quite pricey. So I would suggest you start with QGIS. It's open source, is just as effective, and it can help you if you're just starting. So you don't need a license for that. You just need a very good laptop and you can use it. It's open source, a desktop application. So I would say start with QGIS, and when you can afford, you can go on to using ArcGIS. So none is better than the other. I would say some people have their bias, but I'll just say start with QGIS. It's free. That's why. Okay, to what extent must you be skilled in programming to learn or apply GIS in agriculture?
Please look at the screen.
I'm not very skilled in
Question on the
programming,
screen. There's a
and
question on
I'm
the
a,
screen.
so I see a question. To what extent must you be skilled in programming to learn or apply GIS in agriculture? I won't I would say you have to be very skilled. Like I would call myself a an expert developer, and I'm already applying GIS in agriculture. I'll say you should start where you are. You can start with NDVI. NDVI is usually like vegetation indices, plant stress analysis. They're usually like the beginner because it's just basic math. We are subtracting and adding different spectral bands to give you a result. So that doesn't require programming. And these softwares, most of them have features that you just click and it gives you a result. You don't have to start with programming skills. You can learn that as you go, but it doesn't have to be your starting point. You can start with basic analysis and you are fine, you're good to go. So you don't need to be skilled. Okay. So I would say there's a question here. Can GIS be used in a greenhouse to monitor crops and not just open field? What you give GIS is what GIS is going to analyze. So I think the question should start with if you can get data from that greenhouse, then GIS can analyze it for you. Once you are able to collect data, I don't know about flying drones inside a greenhouse, and I am very sure a satellite cannot collect plant data from a greenhouse. But once you can get data from the crops in that greenhouse, then GIS is able to analyze it.
So, Precious, if you can look at the screen, there are questions popping up there for you to answer to. Um, okay.
Okay, I see. As an expert, where do you advise a beginner to start and focus more like the bedrock or the foundation? I started with just being curious about movements. So if I were to move from one location to another, what's the distance? How long will it take me there? And then I went on to analyzing population, analyzing, let's say, movement of people generally. So it depends on what you are interested in. First of all, why do you want to start learning GIS? What problem are you trying to solve? What solution are you trying to create? And just start from there. Basically, you have to start learning data structure, the different types of data as far as GIS is concerned, the different processes, how to collect data to even use on GIS, because most times when you want to start learning GIS, you might not have access to a drone to collect data. So what you have might be satellite data. So you could start from what kind of satellite data do I need to solve this problem? What kind of satellite data is available to me? Are there free resources? Are there paid resources? So you start with data structure basically, and then you start with data collection. Once you get your data structures right, different types of data, there's raster, there's vector, there's attribute data. Once you are able to go through basics of the data structure, know which one can be used to solve which problem. Then you can now advance to collecting the data. Let's say, for example, in agriculture now, we use raster data. We use vector data as well, but raster just means images. We use a lot of images because what we are analyzing has to do with spectral information. So you want to know, how do I analyze raster data? If I needed raster data, what platforms do I need to go to source it for free? And there are different types. There's USGS, there's Sentinel, there's Landsat. So different types of data. So just start with data structure and data collection. Once you master it very, because most of the time it's good to get the basics, understand the basics first, and then you just move on from there. Okay, there's a question that says, how can GIS be used to calculate plant or tree counting? So this is more like a machine learning process. So you train, is something that I would have preferred to show if time permitted us. But you are basically, when you let me paint a picture. When you go to the farm, you capture data, be it most preferably drone data, because drone data is sharper, the resolution is better, you can see the crops better. So when you capture that data, you stitch it, you upload it, then you start training models. Training models just means you are providing the system samples. You are telling the system, when you see something like this, classify it as maize. When you see something like this, classify it as maize. When you see something like this, classify it as weed. So you just give it enough samples. The more samples you give it, the better model it gives you. So it's what you give it, it gives you back. So you give it as many samples. It takes note of the spectral signature of those samples, their color basically, and then it now uses that information to count. So every single crop that has that spectral information, it counts it, and then it gives you output and tells you these are the number of crops on your farmland. You also define the extent to which it should count anyway, but you just have to provide it. You have to provide it with enough samples, quality samples. You don't classify a weed as a crop, so you have to specify for it, and then it works with that. It's just like AI. basically ChatGPT. You tell it, give me this, and then you prompt till it gives you your desired result. So if it gives you a result and you are not satisfied, you can provide it with more samples. You just keep training it. It learns from the information you are giving it, and then it gives you results. All right, for those asking, our website is on the chat box, precisionfieldacademy.com. So every question you have, courses you want to take, bits for GIS, drone tech, we have everything in store for you. Yeah, go to our website, take your time to go through the courses, decide on which one you are interested in, and then we would hold your hand from that point till you get your certificates. I don't know if there are any more questions.
All right, guys. Thank you so much for joining the call. And uh, Precious, are you still on the call? There are questions on the screen. Please look at the screen.
All right, let me. Okay, can GIS be used in predicting how planting processes can go in a greenhouse in an area? I don't know what this person means by planting processes. I don't understand what they mean by planting processes because it's
Let me,
asking for
yeah, let
precision.
me respond. Let me respond. Let me help with that. Um, uh, I think it's been a great one. Precious, thanks for sharing. So if Abidemi understands what Precious has shared today, you would understand that GIS is, or it's a system of, from starting from you collecting the data, analyzing the data, processing, analyzing the data, visualizing the data, right? You just want to ensure uh, that that process, or all of this process, right, are encompassing in the concept of GIS. Now, if you If it is anything around location, your greenhouse has a location. Okay, you can sort of get the size of your greenhouse, and then if you are able to get the size of your greenhouse, as Precious has explained to you in farm boundary, let's take your farm boundary as your size or the size of your greenhouse. You can be able to estimate the number of seedlings to be supplied, right, into the greenhouse based on the spacing that you want to use in the greenhouse, right? So that's actually how you can be able to use GIS concept in your planting process in a greenhouse or even in open field, as the case may be. But the point still remains that if you are able to collect the location data, because your greenhouse is on the surface of the earth with a coordinate, and every inch of the land or of the soil or the pot on in the greenhouse or around the greenhouse has a coordinate, has a reference, right? So you can be able to analyze this data, for whatever insight that you can generate, or perhaps as sharpened or as informed by your expertise, right? So you can be able to do that uh, in places where you have large greenhouse farms, right? Let's take, for example, a place like the Soilless Farm Lab. You can be able to use GIS to sort of map out the farm, the greenhouses. You can count, be it from satellite imagery or drone imagery. You can, whatever you want to do, right? You can be able to do all those details in farm planning, in estimating a lot of things, right? In visualizing the farm, taking it into what we call digital twin. These are all concept of GIS, and everybody is using GIS today. As far as you have, you put on your GPS or your location in your phone, right? Either Android or iPhone, right? This phone is a GIS equipment, right? So everybody can use GIS. Your Google Map, right, is a GIS that you use to move from one location to another. You want to know what is the fastest route, the shortest route. That's GIS for you. Okay. I hope we're good, but great work and presentation by Precious today. I think we still have one more question. Um, okay, can you use GIS on only land farming? What does land farming mean? I don't know if Precious understands that question.
I think water farming would be like for fisheries or something.
Come again?
And no, I'm guessing the person is saying land farming based on the fact that we've been talking about crops. So water farming would be for fishes.
Yeah, maybe, but I think what anybody should take away from this lecture today or webinar today is that as far as what you are talking about as a location, as far as where you are on the surface of the earth is a location. Where I am seated here, it's a location. Where you are watching us from has a location. So if it has location information, it means that GIS is applicable to it. So if even on the sea, right? And this is how ships are able to navigate. If not for the power of GIS or perhaps navigation system, we would not be able to travel by sea or even by air from one point to another, because we'll be lost in the vastness of God's creation, if we want to say. People are, so that's the concept of GIS. As far as it has, because everywhere on the surface of the earth, or either you believe the earth is flat or the earth is round, whatever, every point on the surface of the earth has a footprint which we call geocoordinate, right? A coordinate. So location coordinate, like a number, a code, right? Right. Good. So if you are able to know this, you can be able to say you want to navigate from where you are to a particular location. You can be able to then, process that data of these 2 points to know what is the shortest distance between these points to this point, or how do you want to move, or you want to map the glaciers, you want to map the deep seas and places that you should not pass through. So all of these details is what we want. Thank you. Somebody said GIS is for traceability. I think so, right? You are able to, trace. It could also support traceability. I would agree with that. So I hope we had. Okay, somebody said, may I ask, how can we get certificate of participation? Okay, certificate of participation would be given to um the administrator is going to communicate to you after this webinar, most likely on Monday. And I think you can also revisit this webinar again to learn. You are going to get the link with uh, assessment, okay, for you to get the certificate of participation, or every other information that is required and needed will be communicated to you. So yeah, that's the plan, and I think you're excited like me. I'm also excited. It's yeah, Precious, you want to wrap up your presentation, the last word before we close, and if we have more questions, we'll be able to treat them.
Oh yeah, I think we are done.
Okay.
Yeah. All
Okay.
right. The link to the website for Academy is up. If you need more information, you can just contact us through our email address. It's also available on the website as well. And so, any questions, further questions, or inquiries you might have concerning taking any of the courses available on the website, please do not hesitate to send us an email or a WhatsApp message, and would reply to you as soon as possible. So, thank you very much to everyone for joining us. And like the flying farmer already said, there will be an assessment and certification would follow right up after that. So, thank you very much, everyone, for joining.
Okay, thank you so much, Precious. That was a great delivery. Even though we cannot see you, um, we would have been good to see you maybe another time. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge with us. All right, guys, I think there's no more. So you can watch this um, presentation. You can watch this presentation on YouTube. So if you would like to revisit, thank you very much and have a great evening.